Hi, welcome to a very special episode of The Working Songwriter, where yet again the tables are turned, and I won't be the one doing the interviewing. I will be interviewed myself about my upcoming album, Nation of Heat Revisited, which is a reimagined version of my solo acoustic debut. This time it's reimagined with a full band, including members from My Morning Jacket, The Killers, Jason Isbell's 400 unit. It's an entirely different record. It's not a remix. It's not a remaster. It's a new thing. And so today I'm going to talk about a little bit of the process of that, specifically about the new version of a song called I Do My Father's Drugs, which is the second single out right now. And the fella who's going to help me unpack all of this and who's going to interview me is my longtime friend. I'm sure everyone listening to this will know him well from his own work and from appearing on this podcast many times. Let's welcome my good friend from Strand of Oaks, Tim Showalter. Hey, man.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks for doing this again.
Anytime. This is the last time I did it was one of my favorite things. It was nice to turn, as you said, turn the tables and convince you to do this again. It took a little bit of convincing.
Well, yeah, I disagree. I do like to talk about myself. So
yeah, but I don't know. I think you're a generous person, and it's good to turn that around sometimes. And
my wife has hit a point where I can't talk about myself to her anymore, so I'm having to find other outlets for it.
I'm there. I made that decision. Like I removed all musical discussions from my marriage, and it actually got to be a much better marriage. Yes. The music industry is just no longer discussed anymore.
No, just the yard.
Yeah, it's just the yard and cactus.
Just whether to buy a $50 weeder or a $30 weeder from Amazon. That's it.
Oh man. Well, I mean, it's just. I think it's been amazing to see this whole thing grow. I mean, what years are we at now with Working Songwriter? Is this
number
5?
Year number 6
years. Oh.
Yeah, this is. I mean, Working Songwriter started 2016, so like pre-original Trump election. Like it just feels like a totally different world. It started then, and it's been going for 6 years. Although the last 2 years have felt different since we took it up from monthly to weekly has been a big difference, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's longer than most bands' music careers at this point. You've been doing the Working Songwriter.
That's not saying a lot, but yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I think that you're obviously it's always fun to talk together, but I think that you're perfect to talk about this new record with because you were around so much when I was touring the original record.
I mean, in preparation for this, I just I don't know if you're getting this, but I'm getting like nostalgias. I used to think was kind of like a non-existent thing in my life. Yeah. But as each year passes, listening to these songs and, both the old versions and, what I've heard of the new versions, it just was a true wave of nostalgia. Like it felt like it, but it not like a sad nostalgia. It just was like, wow, that was a really good time. Just a genuinely, dare I say, innocent, dare I say, it was just a really good period in my life. And in your life as well. And these songs are just intrinsically matched with those times. Cause I mean, we'll talk about this when we talk about the tour we did, but I watched every set you did. And I know my mind goes through places where I forget things and stuff, but like instantly when I hear like Speak Plainly Diana or just Hymn 35, I'm like, oh, I know every single lyric to this song. Like I watched this song live, 30, 40 times. And it's a really good feeling. They're not my songs, but they feel so inhabited in my life because I got to see you perform and learn a lot from it. So it's nice to be nostalgic, I guess, is what this is.
It is. I find the nostalgia hitting me as I'm older too. I think it's especially because during that period when we were both touring like crazy, like 200, 250 dates a year, for some reason in my mind, I just thought that was going to last forever. Like that was just going to be my existence, was going to be, gassing up a panel van on the plains of Iowa for like the rest of my life. And now, I mean, I'm just in a very different place. You're in a very different place too, where it's like we're still playing music. We still get out there to play, but it's nothing like that that volume. And I'm glad that it isn't, because it was too much. It was really bad
Yep.
for my mental health at the time. It was really bad for my consumption of substances.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was something really innocent and romantic about it as well.
I mean, it was like, it's something that I think we all should like work to get back towards, because even if it was in the past, doesn't mean that it's over. Like, we can approach music and creation. And I think that's what the beautiful thing of like you going back and revisiting these songs that are so important in your life and many others. It's like the past isn't over. You know, the songs are not a stagnant thing that are made. And because think about how, like, you know, a song like Hymn 101, you've been playing for, it's 2009, you know, how many, I'm not good at math, but 13, 14 years maybe. And how many different iterations and stuff have you hit it on stage, you know, and changed it and played it differently? And I think that shouldn't be confined to only the recording. I mean, excuse me, it shouldn't be confined to only the live show. You're allowed to go back, and everyone should be encouraged to be like, well, I don't know, I'd like to see these songs in a different light. And I think it's a creatively courageous move that it's, you know, kind of getting me thinking like, wow, I would like to try that for some of my songs.
Well, I mean, we're also in a different place in the music business, both on the business end and the technical end. On the business end, people are much more likely to own their masters in publishing at this point. So it's legally possible. And then also it's technically possible because it's so much cheaper to be able to make records now than it used to be. I mean, when we started in like 2008, you know, there was like 3 studios in each city, and each one of them was like, you know, $1,500 a day to lock it out and all this stuff. And now you can buy a universal audio interface for, you know, $2,000, and it'll sound pretty damn good, man. And you can record as much as you want on that.
The other thing is, when you're young, I mean, it took me like 3 or 4 records to not be scared of the studio. Like, you know, and not scared. There was just like almost an alter reverence to what a studio is. And in turn, that just kind of like hurt the mojo more than it, you know. And then you realize like a studio is just this pure place of creativity, and anxiety should be left at the door. But that's another cool thing, because I can only imagine, I mean, I have so many questions, but I can only imagine what I've heard just you say a few things, but how you even wrangled the studio time in the first place to get in there. Like, you went overnight at times, and just for the Nation of Heat.
Yes. I mean, that was a crazy time, but like to what you just said there, it took me a while to not be scared of the studio as well. There was a guy I know, he's a good pedal steel player from Kentucky named Tom Nadeau, and he described recording with this guy once who had never really recorded before. And when they went into the control room to listen back, every time they put like a plug in or change the EQ or the delay on something, he would start freaking out because he didn't understand that they weren't like permanently changing the music or destroying it in some way, right? He's like, no, stop, don't make it sound like that. And while that's like an extreme example, I did feel a certain amount of that when I first started recording stuff. I felt like every take was much more important than it actually was. It's not a big deal in the studio. The studio is the place where it's ultimately not a big deal. And you can sit back and you can try things, and it's fine if it doesn't work. And in fact, there's a 95% chance that whatever you just did right there is not going to work. So just keep on taking shots at the basket. It's not a big deal. And so I think that there's a really big difference between recording that first record, where feeling like, you know, I don't want to mess up, but then also being very incompetent as well. And now being a bit more competent because I've spent 10 or 15 years doing it, but also more relaxed. I mean, not taking it to heart. You know?
Not reactionary, not those things that you do as a young creative person. But at the same time, though, there is such importance to, is it called the young mind, or is it like, what's the
beginner's mind?
Beginner's mind. And there is something like listening to the original songs from Nation of Heat. There's something so beautiful about the fact that like there was no like, it was a pure thing there, because like no matter how hard you try, you know, when you learn, it also complicates things, because you're like, well, I know how to do this, and I know how to sing or put together a take or a song. And there's something just like, you know, I'm dealing with that in my own creative life, writing records, of like, how do I get the distance between the moment of creation and the final product the smallest. Like how do you, and like when I listen to the original Nation of Heat, it feels like there's no time between that creative energy and that like passion of the lyrics, of the voice, the guitar playing, and there's no filter between those two. You're just hearing that exactly how it was on the record. And it's incredible, but I think with the new versions of them, it's still there. And I think like it also could be, I was thinking about, your creative life and how many amazing songs you do. Like this is a really cool opportunity to kind of like recalibrate and be like, I'm going to see who I was at 23. And then what I'm excited about is you going through this project of what comes next. Because you've gone back and you found that and you've like kind of reassessed and re-owned those songs. And now it's like, well, what happens next? Because does it feel liberating to be like, oh, well, I actually got, this is how I may have always thought Hymn 101 should have sounded, or,
It does. And also from a business perspective, it feels liberating. It made me remember that so many artists in the past would have projects like this that were kind of retrospective, and that was kind of like the breakthrough. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I don't mean to compare myself to like these massive artists, but these are the best examples I can think of, which is like I think when he broke through here, I'm pretty certain that when Bob Marley broke through in America, it was like with almost like a career retrospective. Like it was like with a best of record, right? Yeah. Same with the Eagles. Like the Eagles were well known and all this stuff, but like their best-selling record, the one that everyone would end up owning in their house, is like that. It's a best of record, right? Exactly. And so everyone understood it's like just because you've been doing this the whole time, you've been running your little career, it's meant a lot to you. You've been very focused on it. Well, listeners in general have been living their own lives. Yes. You know what I mean? They don't. It doesn't matter to them what you've been doing. Maybe they heard Hymn 101 once, or maybe they heard Heel 10 times 10 years ago, and they're like, "Oh, I like that song. I kind of like that." Yeah. And they spent 10 years going about their own lives. So if you're able to bring it back to them and give it to them in a new way, I think people are still ready to hear it, and maybe hear it in a more serious way than they even did the first time.
Yep. And a song's not put in a cage once you finish it. It's not always trapped there or anything. And I think like you could have made this synthesizer remixes or anything, but the kernel of these songs and the lyrics are just so special that you could have had like a karaoke version and it still would have sounded and that's what's so cool to see, like and that's the mystery of like my role today is like there's mysteries that I want to figure out and solve, and one of them is how in the hell did a 23-year-old Joe Pug write these? I mean, what actually, let me ask you this question: when did these songs started? When did you start writing these songs? Like, was it years before Nation of Heat came out, or were they living in your head for a while, or was it in like a really quick, passionate moment of songwriting?
Pretty quick. I mean, these songs were written somewhere in like a 6, 12, 18-month window within one another. And
so that would put you at 22 years old, 22, 23.
Super young. Yeah. I mean, it was the year after Katrina. Hurricane Katrina was in 2005, and these were in like 2007.
That's amazing. I mean,
but
what I was going to say is like, because it's so cool to think of. We may have talked about in the last one, but the idea of like theater and your background in theater and your background in like an amazing family history of theater and like all this like productive kind of creative nature. Like I just don't understand, like, because I did a little bit on my first record, but my career has been kind of the opposite. Like I feel like I was working out the recipe for 13, 15 years. But I'm just amazed that you came out basically fully formed of what Joe Pug was, of like your lyrical confidence and your melodies and stuff. Like, had you been writing songs since you were 12 years old or something? I knew you had some cool bands that you had some grunge bands back in the day, but I'm just curious. Like, tell me what 22, 23-year-old Joe Pug was like and what you thought a song should be.
I mean, I was just operating on pure instinct at that time. And then the problem was, when I operated on pure instinct, it worked. And then for, I'd say a decade after that, I began to overthink it quite a bit. And so it took a while to get, I mean, you mentioned the idea of beginner's mind earlier. It took a while, I think, to get back to that. And I feel like in the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've been in a place where I've been able to get back to that instinctive mode. But just because you can find it, it's like trying to get your hands around a greased pig, basically. Like you can hold the greased pig for a second, but it's almost like even the more you squeeze the greased pig, it's going to jump out and get away from you. And that is how it feels to be in different creative modes that are intuitive. I mean, I just don't think it's a mode that is meant to be inhabited for long periods of time. And I think if artists do inhabit it for long and extended periods of time, it requires a lot of chemical intervention. I think it requires a lot of like interpersonal turmoil on like the family level and the friendship level. Like, I think you have to basically go scorched earth with the rest of your life to remain in that zone for like long extended periods of time. And I think when that period of time comes to an end, you pay for it. You pay for it pretty hard.
Yeah.
Because it's
or
just
if
too
you're
intense.
Stevie Wonder. Like, or you could just be
You
Stevie
just
Wonder,
live there. It's fine. Yeah.
exactly. Who was born with that. But I think that's admirable though, because like to what extent does your creative life, how much are we indebted to that? Because it's good to be a creative person, but it's also good to be a person that exists on the planet and has children and has a relationship and has other goals outside of, and I think it's like, I don't think that as I get older, that's a great thing. I'm glad you weren't in that place. Like as one of your best friends, like, I'm glad you weren't in that place forever. And it's like, do we really want to be in that turmoil? Because like, I think it does lead to a lot of stuff. But what I'm realizing in my life and I see in yours is like, we realize the struggle doesn't need to be the first ingredient towards a great creative life. Like it can be an awesome life. And like, you can be an awesome person and be healthy and be a great dad and husband or whatever. And it's like the next step I think you and I need to discover is like, how are we going to write great songs with nice times, or relatively nice times, and where do those songs live? And I think you've definitely been doing it, and I think I'm reaching towards it. But I just think it's just very like, because we're all thinking like, if some of us are around our age, I turn 40 in a few weeks, like, it's we do start thinking of like, what were we doing at 22? Like, what was because I see 22-year-olds now and I'm like, wow, I don't remember being that. I don't remember who I was when I was 22 anymore. Like, I have no memory. I think I was in college or teaching, but like, it's probably a stupid question to even ask it, because like, how are we supposed to? I don't remember writing I now have written songs for so long, I have no idea when I wrote them or how I wrote them, or like, I have no memory of writing songs back then. Well,
it's funny. There's kind of an inverted dynamic. Whereas now that I'm older and I have other things going on in my life, if I have a day to be creative and I don't achieve anything that's worthwhile, I still understand that once I leave the studio, that I'm still, a decent person and I'm okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the inverted thing is, when I was younger, I could have days where I accomplished a lot creatively that I deemed to be excellent, but then I would take it out of there and I would act like a shitty person and then think that because I was doing good creative work that it somehow justified being a shitty person. It's like this inverted thing. And I think it's much better to be in the latter place. Well, look, I want to play for you one of these new tracks.
I'd love to. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier some of it, what would it sound like with kind of a synth vibe? And this one is the second single we've put out, and a lot of
with
what
my
you're
man Derry.
With Derry DeBorja from
Derry's on the synths. Yes.
Jason is
on Derry.
Okay, so here you go. This is I Do My Father's Drugs Revisited.
party starts on Monday and Christmas starts in June. When no one minds, I just arrived and I'll be leaving soon. If I return with eyes half open, don't ask me where I was. I do my father's drugs. When every revolution is sponsored by the state, there's no bravery in bayonets in tearing down the gates. If you see me with a rifle, don't ask me what it's for. I fight my father's wars. When hunger strikes a fashion and freedom is routine, when all the streets in Cleveland are named for Martin Luther King, you will see me at protest, but you'll notice that I drag, I burn my father's flag. When the party starts on Monday and Christmas starts in June, when no one minds, I just arrived and I'll be leaving soon. If I return with eyes half open, don't ask me where I was. I do my father's drugs. I do my father's drugs.
Not to take any credit, but I remember about 7 years ago, I was like, let me throw some synths on. I think it was for, which was it? Would have been Windfall?
Yeah.
Dude, that was incredible. I don't know. I think and that proves exactly what I was talking about. It's like these songs aren't stagnant. Like I heard that song for the first time, it feels like, and I've heard that song hundreds of times, and I don't know. It's just, there's like, it's I don't know if it's too on the nose, but it's kind of like present day Joe is talking to whoever Joe was at the time of that writing, and it's a pretty beautiful conversation to be like, you're singing a song, you're covering a song by your former self. And that's wild to think. And it's incredible because, like, and you're kind of like moving it into where you are now. There's a confidence, there's a willingness to kind of like, I mean, you put an arpeggiated synth on a Joe Pug song. That's, of course, Derry went for the arpeggios. I love, he's just has such a good touch, but like, I don't know. That's just something that it shows us that like we all evolve and we all grow as people, and we all like, I don't know. Maybe that's just kind of how I always in my mind thought, Joe. Like when I think about music, it may sound differently in my head than what the actual stuff is, and that's kind of how I hear your music if I am just thinking about it and not listening to it necessarily.
Yes, I've been chained for years to the idea of like, well, I got to make records that I could be able to tour, right? And make it sound exactly like the record. So, okay, there's got to be acoustic guitar in here and this, that, and the other. And I don't know, like getting ready to put these songs together, I almost went in the opposite direction. I mean, there's no acoustic guitar on the entire record, and that was by design. And I just, I wanted it to be that way. It didn't. I kind of decoupled the idea that it's got to sound like live the same way that it sounds on the record. I think I think listeners are really smart. I think listeners are really savvy. I think listeners are sophisticated, and they understand that a song can take on a bunch of different forms. And if I don't necessarily have Derry with a wall of arpeggiated, modular synth at the club gig, I mean, I think people are going to get it. Like, they understand.
Well, absolutely. And I think too, it's the idea of like, and that's such a good thing, like protect your listeners and respect your listeners. And that's like, and part of that comes with the idea of like, I think, especially for artists like you and me, I think people who dig our music just dig when we're psyched on what we're doing. And we're not trying to make what we think we should make, instead of, because I've gone down that road, we all have, of like, I think this is the song that Strand of Oak should write right now, instead of like, what is making me excited. And like, I think that is the best way to like, be an artist, to be like, no, this is what I hear that. I hear you being excited about how these sounds, in your voice and the songs. Like it is exciting, because it's like, this is like, you like hit in Star Wars, the hyperdrive button. It's like, holy shit. Like, we're in the freaking, like, this is cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of artists will talk about this in a way that is unnecessarily confrontational, where they'll say, hey man, when I'm creating, it's between me and the canvas, audience be damned. Right. And I think that you can operate in the same way and not have such a confrontational paradigm about it in your head. And I think the way to do that is by saying, you said respect and protect your audience. It's just like, no, this isn't a confrontational thing of I'm going to do whatever the hell I want and F you. It's more just like, thank you for listening to my music so much. I trust you to trust me on, I'm just going to follow my muse here, and I might lose some of you, but I think I'm going to keep a lot of you and maybe bring some new people in, and no worries. But I got to do this, and you are sophisticated enough as a listener or a consumer of the music that you understand that I got to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and anyone that's ever come to your music or found it is listening in the same regards as like, I don't know, I throw this name out there a lot because there's not many other examples of people who did it better. But the idea of John Prine. Just like people went to John Prine for comfort, for like inspiration, to hear someone like be extremely smart but approachable at the same time. And that's exactly what you do. Like, you're never like, it's generous songwriting. And I think I'm always drawn to that of like, and it's good to talk about like, it's weird to talk about listeners as this general group, but just in that, the idea of what it means to listen to music and people to appreciate your music, like they're coming to you for the same reasons. Like, it feels really good always to put on a Joe Pug song. It never feels like you're tricking me or standing taller than I am, and like pointing your finger or anything like that. Like, it feels, but it also feels really accessible. Not accessible, yes, but like intelligent and challenging sometimes, because there's a surface to Joe Pug songs that feels really great. Then you dig a little bit deeper. And like we were just saying before, like you were 22 and you wrote a lyric, I am the teeth of champions. I am rust and water rot. That is some true, that's poetry right there, and it comes out of your mouth so silky smooth, but then you dig a little deeper and like, wow, this is some subtext heavy shit right now.
You dig a little bit deeper and you're like, wow, this is all about Illuminati conspiracies. That's kind of weird. A lot of references to pyramids with eyes on top.
Oh, wow.
And,
why does he keep talking about the backside of a dollar? Let's chill on that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think people who make art also make another mistake in that they conceptualize audiences as their conception of an audience is kind of out of date. Like, they kind of look at it as if audiences are still like these uber conservative, folk music listeners from 1962 who, when Dylan went electric, they wanted to have Pete Seeger chop, the electric cord with an axe. Like, people now have consumed so much media on a regular basis. They've seen so much, they've heard so much modernist music, postmodern music. People are much more sophisticated and have much more kind of liberal tastes in music than they used to. And I think so in some ways artists now when they bemoan like an audience's reaction or what they assume the reaction will be, they're actually kind of shadow boxing a ghost that doesn't exist there anymore. I mean, I think people are they're really savvy now, and they really they understand the behind the curtain of it a little bit more too.
And ultimately, it just boils down to the simplest fact ever: if it's good, it's good. If
Good
it's bad,
music,
it's bad.
Yep.
You
Good
know,
music.
and like, I don't care what kind of music someone's makes. I just know if it's good or not. And I've had 30 years of experience as an active listener to kind of acquire that filter of like, is this good? Yeah, it's good. Okay. Like, I don't know what it sounds like. It could be, like anything, but if it's good, it's good. And I think that's why this is special, because these are truly great songs. And I want whatever chance someone has to hear them for the first time, to be reminded, or to hear them again, I think it's a gift. And I'm your best friend, so I'm going to say nice things about you, I am biased because you're my best friend, but I also am speaking for a lot of people. I feel like when I get to do this switcheroo, I feel like I'm able to now be the voice of the other side of the audience, that, this is my chance to say, this is a gift and this is something special to provide to people who have, been with you for over a decade now at this point.
Well, man, thank you. And it does, I'm not going to lie, it does feel a little bit weird sometimes to come out and be like, hey, I think this music is special. Listen to it, and say it over and over again while you're trying to get people to listen to the record. But I don't know. I'm just at a place where I really do believe in these songs in particular. I believe in these recordings of them. And it's like, I do want everyone to listen to it, man. And I'm not afraid to say anymore that, like, I think this is good. You might not, and that's fine. But, I just want you to listen to it. So thank you, Tim, for turning the tables on me like this.
Yeah.
And,
anytime. It's like the idea of, there's a lot of generosity in what you do, and it's good to give that back to you.
Cheers to that. All right, bud. I'm sure I'll talk to you on the phone in like 10 minutes. So.
Yeah, for sure. I'll see you, Joe. Love you, buddy.
Love, brother. Nation of Heat Revisited is not a remix. It's not a remaster. It's an entirely new album. A full band reimagining of my acoustic debut, featuring members of The Killers, My Morning Jacket, Jason Isbell's 400 Unit, and many more. The cover artwork was designed by legendary Chicago artist Tony Fitzpatrick, and the liner notes were composed by Steve Earle. Head on over to joepugmusic.com to listen to the first single, and then click on the tab for our store to order a copy of 10-inch virgin vinyl with a gatefold booklet, or a CD, or a sweet embroidered logo cap, or a super soft album t-shirt. We got it all over there. We'll pack those items up ourselves and send them over to you from our offices in downtown Greenbelt, Maryland. Thank you for supporting 100% independent American music.